Welcome to part 7 of my tutorial for God Hand on Hard, stage 7. This is one of the hardest stages in the game, so these last two stages are very difficult. This one took me about 145 continues, according to the end screen, so one of the hardest stages in the game, definitely. But like I said, the first stage was by far the hardest for me, taking me about 13 hours. This one may have taken about 4 hours. And there are some very, very good tricks that I have some very easy ways to manage a lot of these areas. So if you stay through the tutorial, you should, after watching this, you should be very well prepared, even with basic moves, to be able to get through this area. There's a way to exploit and create checkpoints that I figured out that I've mentioned before by using the challenge arenas and committing suicide in them, which is going to be hugely useful in one of the largest fights in the area. It makes it a pretty easy area to deal with. Now, there is one large endurance match where there is no checkpoints, and, you'll have to manage that with the crowd control skills that we've been learning so far, and I've been covering them in the tutorial as well. But I'll go over everything again. In this area, I first run into the cave and I loot those boxes, of course, because as you know, looting containers is pretty essential on hard mode if you're just trying to beat it. So try to grab as much shit as you can. Try not to get sucked into those little whirlpool things, but all you really have to do here is ignore all the enemies and destroy these pillars. Now, I can't tell you for sure if destroying certain ones will spawn the boss or allow you to exit the area early, because I don't remember that, but if unsure and you want to skip more shit, always check a speedrun video and check this level in a speedrun video and see. It's probably only about 5 or 10 minutes long, so just check that and see what parts can be completely skipped. I do try to skip areas whenever possible, but I'm not a speedrunner, so I don't know if I researched everything when I did it 2 years ago. But now this boss will appear, and this is quite an easy boss. We dealt with this guy before. He might be a little bit different this time, but it's very similar. Hopefully you have a few roulette orbs. If not, I think there's a checkpoint on this guy, and you'll start with at least one roulette orb at default, so that can help you get your first God Hand bar full. So you don't have to get it full, just get it to the point where it turns orange and you can use it. And you'll be able to do a lot of damage to him. You may have to actually fight him normally, depending if you don't have a lot of roulette orbs. It's better not to waste a lot of roulette orbs and try to fight him normally if you can, because he's one of the easier bosses. You can use the up dodge on the right analog stick like that to just keep bobbing and weaving, and you'll be completely invincible from the missiles. So it's very easy. Just mash, keep mashing up on the right analog. And aside from that, punch him and guard break him when he blocks, and get ready to roll back anytime you see him telegraphing his electric charge move where he lunges forward. It's very there's a lot of time to react to it. So once you see him telegraphing it, he kind of stops in place for a moment. That's when he's going to do that charge. So of course, when he gets down on one knee, he's going to shoot the missiles. So very easy boss to read and deal with. Really not a hard boss. And after you're done with that, you may only need to destroy one more pillar to get out of here. I don't think you have to destroy them all, because it looked like I exited a little bit early when I watched my video. I do always recommend breaking all the vases and shit. Now, I don't remember if the cactuses ever drop anything. They might be similar to the benches in the early areas where no items come out of them. I'm guessing no items come out of the cactuses, but I was just making sure because, try to grab everything you can when the game is this fucking hard. But I would say mainly probably just loot the vases. Try to loot all the vases. If you do get sucked down, you have to mash the buttons to get out. You can also, of course, knock enemies into there, but like I said, it's better not to really fight the enemies unless you have to. And this area is mainly about destroying those pillars to proceed. And, of course, the boss. So, yeah, I do get interrupted here. I still try to focus on, the task at hand. Make sure you have your hand plant kick equipped as one of your moves, because we're going to be using that really fucking heavily. It's going to be, used as a major move. But I believe my tutorial is going to help immensely with the large encounter. That's probably one of the hardest fights in the game. Definitely probably the longest fight in the game. Very difficult, but I found some good ways to manage it. So yeah, after you destroy that pillar, it seems to open up that light at the end over there, and then you can leave the area. Now, I don't know if you have to destroy that specific one to get the exit to open up, so I would say try to destroy that specific one if you're watching my video. Or like I said, just check a speed run and see what the minimal amount of things are that you can do to get out. You know, if you really want to end it early, but it's easy enough. You get checkpoints. You get a checkpoint at the boss fight, and I think after the boss fight, so... yeah, nothing difficult there. So now is where shit gets very hard. This is a very hard and long encounter. So I'm going to walk you through step by step here. First thing I do is run around and grab all the vases and throw them at the enemies. Of course, you can do some of these, with the small enemies, you can do these launchers, which I'll explain in a moment. But the first thing I mainly do is run around in a circle in this arena and just grab all the vases and try to throw them at the fat guy in the middle. Because the fat guy in the middle has these ranged missile attacks that are very, very fucking irritating to deal with when you're trying to fight other enemies. So, also, try to keep the tall woman with the axes alive. The reason to keep her alive is because we're going to farm her for God Hand and keep her as the last enemy. That's the goal in each phase, is to keep at least one of those women alive as the last enemy so we can farm them. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So yeah, start off by throwing all the vases at the fat guy. And never backtrack to get a vase. Always run around in a full circle and do a full lap. If you try to move back to grab a vase that you missed, you'll probably get hit. The enemies are very fast and aggressive in hard mode, as you know. So I recommend keep moving forward and running in a circle and grabbing them. You'll get them on your next lap, so don't worry about backtracking. You got plenty of room to run around. So yeah, now that the fat guy's dead, here's where farming these axe women comes in to play. Now use your all you need to do here is use your hand plant kick each time they get up, and you're pretty much never going to get hit doing this unless unless you don't react fast enough. But it's very easy to do. And whenever they get stunned, don't spank them. Just extract the God Hand from them while they're stunned. You'll be able to fill up your God Hand meter by doing this. Now we weren't able to fill it up that time, but I did get some God Hand off of them. But you will be able to get a lot of God Hand off of those enemies, especially if they have a lot of health, left. So we're going to be farming them after each encounter and keeping at least one alive. Now, when you do use your God Hand, focus on the tall male character. In general, you want to focus on these taller male characters when you use your God Hand in this whole encounter. Because all the other enemies are considered small enemies, aside from the axe women. But the guy with the knives is a small enemy. And what that means is that you can use your launcher, your hand plant kick, and then you hit triangle right after hand plant kick, and you do that. And what that's going to do is it's going to knock any enemies that are around the guy away and damage them, but it's also going to get them all off of you as well. And in the meantime, you're also going to be killing the small guys because we want to clear them out so that we have only the woman remaining. And when only the woman's remaining, we're going to farm her again with hand plant kicks. So hand plant kick, just keep doing it. Just keep charging her and hand plant kicking her. You don't want to run past her because then she may hit you from behind, obviously, but you can flip back to get into position. But just keep hand plant, kicking her, and that's it. And don't take advantage of the spanking. Just use the spanking stun state to grab out some God Hand with the Yes Ma'am Kablam move we've been using. See, now you do your extractions with Yes Ma'am Kablam. You can do 2 extractions on every stun state. So you do it once, and when he reaches into her stomach, you hit up on the right analog stick to dodge and cancel out of the animation where he taunts after reaching into her stomach. And then you do the Yes Ma'am Kablam immediately again, cancel it again with right analog up. Which I explain in detail a little bit more thoroughly in the second video, the second stage. But yeah, so you just farm them after each encounter and try to get as much God Hand as you can. If you do get a full God Hand bar, then of course go for the spanking and finish the fight off. It's an easy way to damage them. But the main thing I utilize these women for is for a great way to get God Hand. And then I use the God Hand on the taller enemies. And of course, as I explained, I used all the pots in the arena to take out the fat guy, basically. So I didn't have to fight him, really, aside from maybe one jump kick. So yeah, use your God Hand. Immediately focus on one of these tall guys. For whatever reason, I chose this particular guy, and there may have been a reason for that, but it was 2 years ago, so I couldn't tell you exactly, but I think you get the general idea. It doesn't have to be perfect. But you do want to use these strategies to make things easier if you're just trying to beat it. I found this to be a very effective way to deal with this area. Now remember, if you do launch the taller and larger enemies like the axe women, you're not going to be able to hit triangle to do the launch combo where you launch them into the distance after doing a hand plant kick and then hitting triangle. You can only do that on smaller enemies, like the smaller punk enemies and the guys with the knives. These big enemies are not going to be able to be launched like that. So if it's not working, that's why. But what you can do is use the small enemies when the larger enemies are gathered around, and you can damage them all at once if you want. Like this. Well, that one missed, but a lot of times it will hit even if they're behind you. But that's the general idea. Now, notice I didn't pick up the weapons yet because I'm saving the weapon for the final wave where a hard enemy comes out. But I don't end up being able to use it because the enemy dodges it anyway, but that's the idea. Yeah, so now we're going to fill up our God Hand meter again. See, this part, really, it's not that hard if you use these crowd control techniques, run around, and do everything in this order, like I'm saying. You know, if this is the method you use, you'll be all right. If you got this far, this shouldn't even be too difficult with this technique. Probably what took me long was trying to figure all this shit out. I don't remember how long this particular part took me, but I know on this stage I used like 145 continues or something. So this was definitely a difficult stage, even with all the exploits and things that I knew about. So yeah, try to fill your God Hand meter, and once it's basically full, you can finish her off, spank whatever, to speed things up. Try to grab the sword right after you kill her so that you can throw it at the guy that comes out. You may get some nice damage if it lands. I wouldn't know because I didn't land it for some reason. Usually it auto-homes in on the guys, but maybe he was a little bit too far away when I threw it. But either way, don't be afraid to use your shit. You're probably not going to mind using your God Hand and your roulettes at this point because this encounter can be really difficult, so you'll probably just want to finish it off. And you can get more shit in the next area. There's a huge area where you can get tons of items. So, yeah, don't worry about it. In the next area, I'm going to show you how you can make checkpoints after defeating each enemy if you want, which would be really tedious to do. But, I mean, even if you were bad at this game, you could get through that area by making a checkpoint after each area you defeat, each enemy that you defeat. So, I'm going to show you how it's pretty much fail-proof. Otherwise, the next area can be extremely difficult. It's probably one of the hardest areas in the game if you don't know how to make checkpoints. I imagine it would be very difficult, but I never played it that way because I didn't have to. I figured out that I could make checkpoints early on. Well, actually, I don't know when it actually dawned on me that I could make checkpoints, but I think I've known about it for a while at this point. But I do explain it throughout the entire tutorial, so I will go over it again. Because if you don't know that, you're going to make things a lot harder on yourself. Unless you're trying to do some kind of challenge run, there's really no point to make things difficult. Now, all you need to do here is collect 3 keys, and then you can exit. That's it. So I believe certain enemies are going to hold the keys. But again, I say check a speed run if you want to see exactly where everything is. And do the minimal amount of shit possible. Then always check a speed run of this section. But all you need to do here is get 3 keys. So if you pay attention to the enemies that I take out to get the keys, it may be the same enemies each time. And you may be able to utilize that information. But either way, it's not really going to make a hell of a difference because you can just take your time here, and once you open the door that you have to fight, you will have a checkpoint available to you that you can create at any time. It's basically a quick save that you can save at any time, and you can just kill one enemy, save, and that enemy will be permanently dead because there's a finite amount of enemies that appear in this area. It's limited, so it's not going to go on. It doesn't go on forever. Nothing in this game has infinite respawns, as far as I'm aware, so eventually all the enemies will be dead. And of course, when you have a checkpoint and you die and respawn at the checkpoint, you're going to have full health again. And I think it always gives you 1 roulette. I believe so, whenever you die at a checkpoint. On top of that, the checkpoint that I'm going to show you has a bunch of barrels and shit. So you could probably keep committing suicide and get better pickups out of that checkpoint with the barrels and shit. I think they respawn each time you spawn back at the checkpoint, but I'm not sure. Either way, you don't need all that shit anyway, because like I said, you can kill one enemy at a time and just take your time here. You'll beat it. Just got to be patient. So yeah, so for this, just kill this door. Focus on this door if you want to get into the checkpoint area, because this is the checkpoint area. So whenever you're ready to make a checkpoint, get ready to kill the door. You can, of course, ignore the enemies if possible, Or just launch them out of your way. You already know how to launch smaller enemies, so whatever you want. And then just run and hit circle on the ladder, and you'll jump right up the ladder, and the enemies won't even have time to hit you. Since you have invincibility frames when you jump up ladders and down ladders. So yeah, go into the arena and commit suicide. Do not beat the arena. If you beat the arena, I don't think you can reactivate it and make checkpoints. So unless you're confident in your skills, don't do that. Just go in there and purposely lose the arena fight. Now that you've done that, you just do that to make a checkpoint whenever you need it. Just go up there, activate the arena, and commit suicide in it. You'll have a new checkpoint. That's all you got to do. And now the goal here is to get the remaining 2 keys. Which does end up taking me a while because, I wasn't sure where everything was located. And there's a small chance that the key drops may be random, but I'm not sure. I think they're probably fixed, but it's been a long fucking time, and I didn't really test that, so... Because, again, I had no intention on doing a speed run or anything. This was my first time beating the game, and this is how it turned out. So, yeah, these enemies can be kind of annoying, but you can use, if you can hit them with a hand plant kick, you can launch them and abuse them that way. Sometimes if you hit circle at the right time, you'll do some kind of counter, but I don't even know how to activate it. I probably just saw the prompt pop up and just hit it immediately, but I don't know what's a good way to lure them into that prompt. There's a lot of mechanics in this game that I never really delved into, but I didn't need to beat it because I'm pretty good at exploiting AI and exploiting various things. So I found the moves that worked for me, and I stuck to the main arsenal of moves that I liked. But yeah, my playstyle is extremely different than the ones that I've seen online. So but I also think it's very approachable for any player. So I think this tutorial will be useful to put out because it'll have a different approach. You won't have to be a master at, God hand combos and combat to beat the game with my tutorial. There'll be ways to get around that. You still will have to be very skilled at the game as far as you'll have to be very good at crowd control and things like that. So you will have to gain a lot of skill, and it will take hours of practice, but you're going to make things a lot easier on yourself than it would otherwise be. So yeah, here I make another checkpoint after killing a few enemies. I mainly make the next checkpoint after getting the next key. Because, I'm not going to make a checkpoint after each enemy or two because it's not that fucking hard. So I usually wait until I get the next key and then I'll run back and make a checkpoint. So I think that's the best way to do it, unless you're really having trouble. But I can't imagine you would if you got this far in the game that these guys are going to give you that much trouble. Because you have a huge arena to run away from these guys, and you only have to fight certain ones. I do end up killing most of the enemies by the time I get the 3rd key, because I didn't know where the 3rd key was located. So that did happen. I was also trying to farm item drops for the next area. So I believe the next area might be the boss. If you can, it would be good to go into the boss fight with full roulettes and full God Hand, but you don't have to worry about farming God Hand. I mean, the roulettes are the main thing. If you can get 4 roulettes and bring them into the next area, that's why I recommend if you do get any pickups, I'd recommend just not even using your orbs and shit. You can use your God Hand if you really want to, but you're probably better off going back, making a checkpoint with full God Hand and getting all your life back, because, when you commit suicide on a checkpoint, you get all your life back. So I would recommend not using your God Hand and just trying to, maybe even try to fill it or try to farm that woman for God Hand by using the technique of just isolating her like we did in the last area. Of course, get rid of the one enemy, but then just farm her and get some God Hand off of her using the hand plant kicks and the yes ma'am kablam. Don't spank her like that because you're not going to get much God Hand by doing that, but just, do the yes ma'am kablam extraction technique. I figured she still had enough health left. That's probably why I just did the spanking, because she has a lot of health. But you really don't need to drain her health until you want to kill her. So yeah, try to fill up your God Hand meter if possible. I think I did end up filling it up, and then I ended up using and wasting it. I probably should have just went to a checkpoint and saved it, but I didn't really care too much. But if you want to be extra safe, keep your God Hand as full as possible. Maybe have a full God Hand meter. And try to get 4 roulette orbs before you go to the next area. Go through all the crates until you have all that shit. It's okay if you don't, but it's going to make it a lot easier because you can pretty much beat the next boss without even fighting it directly, barely at all. If you have 4 roulette orbs. And if you have a full God Hand, even better, but you don't even need that. But if you have 4 roulette orbs, you can pretty much do it because you'll have you'll be able to use the chain yankers and the yes ma'am kablam to extract tons of God Hand off of the boss. It's a trick that you can use on, most of the bosses once you get chain yanker and yes ma'am kablam. If you want to use your God Hand, you can. But again, I would suggest just making a checkpoint if you think you're going to die, and then just come back and fight the remaining enemies. At this point, I have all the keys. I think I was just running around for items and shit. Because it is worth doing when you have, another area coming up, especially bosses. Now, of course, these checkpoints don't make separate save slots, I don't think. So, I'm not sure if you can, maybe you can. Maybe these do go into a save slot, but I'm not sure how they work. I don't think you can reload from a ferry because you don't manually save the game. So, I'm guessing you cannot reload those. So, if you get to the boss and you find you don't have enough items, you're probably going to have to go back to a save slot at the beginning of this encounter and do this whole encounter over again and get all the crosses again and all that shit. Which is not hard, but it is tedious. It would be very hard without the checkpoint trick, but still a big waste of time overall. So it is better just try to bring all the shit in to begin with, so you don't have to backtrack. I don't think the boss is that hard, but it's going to be a lot harder if you have to fight it regularly. But they do give you a lot of item drops in the next area as usual in boss fights. So if you die enough times, you could probably get some great item drops and still beat it, but you're just going to make it a longer, more tedious process. Like I said, I try to beat the bosses mostly on chain yankers and yes ma'am kablam and God Hand and, the stun animations. Basically just cycling that whole combo, which you'll see me do again if you haven't seen the previous videos. So yeah, once you have a satisfying amount of roulettes, exit the area. If not, maybe run around, get some more shit. But if not, now you can fight the boss. The boss is extremely easy if you have 4 roulettes because, you're going to be able to just exploit the shit out of that. So yeah, for this boss, all you have to do is run around and throw all the pots at the boss to start off with. That way you know exactly what kind of item drops you have to work with, and you can plan everything ahead. And as well as, you get a little damage by doing that, so you might as well get a little extra damage by throwing, because that little bit of damage at the end can keep you alive when it's tight at the end and you don't have any more roulettes left, so it is good to get that little extra bit of health damage. It does pay off. And like I said, never backtrack to grab a pot. Always just run forward. Backtracking usually gets you hit on enemies and bosses, so just keep running in circles in the direction that you're facing. Don't try to backflip and get back to it. Eventually, you'll get it, and you'll get all these things thrown at the boss. So do that. Now, I didn't get any good drops for this boss fight, but I had 4 roulettes. So now we're going to start doing the chain yankers. As usual, and when he's stunned again, do 2 yes ma'am kablams and cancel out of them, and you'll get 2 extractions, and then immediately hit circle to make sure you take advantage of that stun animation, get that stun damage. And then once that's done, and you have a full God Hand, usually, well, not a full God Hand, but, it's orange, you can use it, so use that again, and just keep cycling that combo. And you pretty much don't even have to fight the boss directly, like a lot of the bosses in this game. The first few levels, you do have to fight everything, but once you get this shit. So yeah, you're just going to keep comboing this shit. I will have to fight him a little bit at the very end, but it's very brief. Some of these bosses I didn't even really learn how to fight that well because, I didn't have to. Once I figured this shit out. I think I also practiced these tricks on normal. Because I had to beat normal again. I beat it many years ago, but I had to play through it again to unlock hard on the emulator. because I played it on the PS2 originally. So yeah, more of a fun fight, not difficult. But if you've gotten this far, you've done very well. There are going to be some very hard parts still left, but there's only one more stage. The final boss can be a big pain in the ass, and I'm going to recommend a rapid fire controller. But you're probably not going to have one for PS2 since they're so rare. If you're playing on an emulator, there's you can use a different controller, obviously, that has rapid fire. But I'm going to assume most people don't have it. Now, the only benefit of the rapid fire controller is forearm fatigue. My hands would pretty much go numb from all the button mashing I had to do because I died so many times on the final boss, and it's a super long endurance kind of fight. So that is the main exhaustion of the final boss, and it is hard as well, but I could deal with the difficulty. It was just that my forearms were going numb, and I couldn't mash the button anymore. So I'd have to take a long break. So I used an old rapid fire controller that's very shitty quality. The analogs are pretty loose, but I did use it on God of War 2 on Titan many years ago on that ridiculous fucking game. And it did allow me to skip those stupid gate opening sequences where you have to mash the buttons. When you die hundreds of times, those things will wear out your arms. So yeah, stay tuned for the next video and I'll break everything down. And thanks for watching.